I am going to be talking about, as you can read, creative therapy. So my youngest memory of creative action was a picture I drew for my art exam back in school. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and the task was to draw a banana. Now, given that I had almost no artistic skills whatsoever, I pretty much drew a cylindrical shape in yellow. But I put an umbrella on top of my banana's head to protect the banana from falling rain. Now, believe it or not, I got full marks in my art exam. So when I think back on why I had to put more into my picture than asked for, I realized I needed to convey or communicate a message, this cognitive activity that I had. Like, I needed to be understood even through my poor drawing skills. So the thing is, the human need to be, there is a human need, like there is an innate drive in us to be, to feel like we are part of a bigger whole, the society. We need to be, the more people that stands in solidarity with us, the more we feel complete or fulfilled as a person. So we communicate, we convey, like we take parts in actions that are community-based, like sports, music, volunteering, etc. So I'm not probably doing this. Okay. Am I supposed to click somewhere in particular? It's not working. Can you please, could someone please check if it's, oh. That's not mine. Okay, so after that, if any one of you come from the era of parenting that I do, you would probably relate to this bit. Have any one of you ever been locked in the bathroom for angering your mother? Like solitary confinement. Thank you. So it's not fun. It's not fun, and nobody really likes to be lonely. That's the thing. No human being really likes to be lonely. So unless there is a problem. Unless there is a problem, and so let me talk about a trauma. 4 years ago, back in 2014, I was accused of murdering my best friend. We got into a car accident. I was driving the car, and he was sitting right next to me, riding shotgun like always. I had a brake slip. I lost control. I rammed my car into a police van. So the grieving father of my best friend held a grudge over me coming out of the accident alive. To be really honest, I held a bigger grudge on me coming out of the accident alive, alone. So he filed a case against me, and he promised to make me pay. He was grieving, and I understand that. And I was promptly taken into custody. I was, like, just after the accident, the next day I was in jail. I spent 9 months in jail. Not only that, I was taken into remand for half a month, being tortured to sign a paper admitting that I committed the murder. For half a month. That's almost 21 days. It's actually more than half a month. So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my family, a few friends who did not run away with the intensity of this case, and some people who had hearts larger than life. I wouldn't be here today. I would still be in jail. So, yeah, I'm sorry, this is a little difficult for me. When I came out 3 years ago, this very month, in fact, I realized my husband had left me. He was having an affair, and he sold all my companies, 7 of them, and he sold all my assets, and he was taking his paramour out of the country. I was devastated. I was distraught. I had nothing. Basically, the life I had built had turned upside down, like this picture. So, yeah. Anyways, this is the technical stuff I'm gonna go to. So, after I came out, I mean, there was some times that I really wanted to give up. I wanted, like, I had thoughts of committing suicide. I had thoughts of killing myself. I probably would have if it wasn't for my family. And there were times I didn't want to get out of my room. I didn't want to meet people. I didn't want to look out. I didn't even want to look out of my window. So pain is something that pain is unbearable for a very, very good reason. It does something to our brains. It does something to our body. It's so intense for a very good reason. So this is a picture of our brain. And that red part is something called the hippocampus. It functions our memory. And what happens to a traumatized person, or a person who's even probably having chronic back pain, is the hippocampus gets smaller. And we are unable to distinguish the present situation from the past, so we get triggered by everything. I mean, everything is like, I mean, you go into the alley where you had that accident, and you're like suddenly having a panic attack, like, I'm there, you know? Then is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This is something that has us response to has us response emotionally to a particular stimuli. For example, what do I feel when I look at this teleprompter? I'm probably going to feel like it didn't work first time, so a little angry. No, I'm not really feeling that. So anyways, it also decreases in volume. And because of that, we also get triggered by something that remotely relates to our accident. Say, a car that is probably damaged somehow. A little dent that would have us have panic. Then is the amygdala, which goes into an overdrive, because it's also controlled by ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And because that's not working, this also stops working. So what it does is, like, even if we cannot have any, it's like everything triggers. Like, then if we see someone with a fear response on their face, someone who's afraid, we get panicked. Like, what? People are afraid, what? So that happens. Then there is an area of the brain that's called the Broca's area, which is also called, which is responsible for our expressions, how we express ourselves. So when we have trauma, we have this term called Broca's aphasia, or expression problem, expressive aphasia, which is where we cannot express ourselves in words. We tend to not be able to talk. Like, this would be very difficult for me 3 years ago. I'm doing this now after a lot of, I mean, I was contemplating looking at my phone and talking out of it. So anyway, so that's Broca's aphasia, and yeah, so it gets really difficult to say how we feel. Then something happens with our heart, like it's heartbreaking, literally. There is this term called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, or the broken heart syndrome, where, say, something that emotionally affects us, a breakup, death of a close person, or even anxiety, triggers for our ventricle to be enlarged, and this part gives us a stroke or a lesion in the heart, which can lead to a bigger stroke where you die. So very, very intense stuff that happens to us when we go through pain. So why creative therapy is important? Many psychotherapeutic methods say, for example, this one, the Gestalt therapy, but it was found by this guy called Fritz Perls. It says that we need to bring our past into the present. We need to bring it into the present, and we need to express it, not just discuss it. We need to put ourselves, our past, into some sort of solid something. So creative therapy is basically, essentially, all of these 5 and a little more. It's expressing yourself in any positive way, like you can't complain. That's expressing yourself too. You can't complain because that's negative. But if you go to a drama class, maybe write a script about your problem and about something that's bothering you, and you express yourself through that. Or say movement, you go traveling and you write about it. You write about what's bothering you even when you're traveling. So when you do that, you express yourself into something, into a positive product, or into a positive solid structure that you can see, that you can contemplate, that you can, even if you don't find a closure for your problems, you would deal with it. You would desensitize yourselves with the problem, like you would deal with it, literally. And it won't bother you, it won't trigger you. So creative therapy is important because it doesn't let the wound get infected. It doesn't let yourself not deal with a problem and then probably go into a drug addiction. Like Samir was saying, he had problems with suddenly he was traumatized and he wasn't dealing with it, and then he went into this bad habit, everything kind of rolled over after that. It was like a domino effect. So what we do is we take the pictures out of our head that troubles us, and we deal with it. Like, imagine this, still water, and the world reflected into the still water. Can anyone guess which one is the real house? This one's this way, and this one's upside down. So can you guess which one's the real house? Which one's the right way up? Yes, that one. Because you see, that's like, you have to scrutinize that. But then if you don't, can you understand which one's the right picture? It's quite difficult to really get it until you scrutinize and you see those planes are very, very straight. This one's not. There's a ripple, in fact. So imagine a body of still water, no distress, no disturbances, and quite easily we see the world reflected into it. So our mind is the same. We have a reflection of the world inside our head. And we box up our pictures that hurt us. We box up our problems. We compartmentalize. This is the era of super compartmentalization. I mean, if you're emotional, people are going to be like, oh, you're too soft, or you're too emotional. Grow up, or get strong. It's not easy to get strong. You cannot just take control, get stronger, just like that. You really, really can't. I mean, I know time heals, but imagine if you have a broken bone or a dislocated shoulder. You need to perform a closed reduction as soon as you can. Otherwise, it's gonna heal, yes, but it will be healing wrong. So, you cannot just leave it on time just like that. For a child who grew up watching their parents fight, is going to have severe, severe intimacy issues. They're gonna be dead scared of being in a relationship or getting married. That's far off, even being emotionally connected to people. Someone who was bullied or jeered would have low self-esteem, quite obviously, and depression. So before these problems go into something that's much more bigger in volume, it's essential that you deal with it. And how exactly can you deal with it? When I came out, when I was in prison, in fact, I used to keep journals. I used to write 3 or 4 times every week. And I used to, I remember crying and writing at the same time. And after I was done, I felt light. And there would be time that I turned a bucket, took a bucket, I turned it upside down, and turned it into a percussion instrument. And my inmates would join me and sing. So when I came out, the reality of my life just hit. There was the stigma of being in jail. There was laws, there was disparity, and everything was all too real all of a sudden. And like I said, I wouldn't get out of my room. But then I kept on writing. I kept on being, somehow expressing myself, writing poetry or something like that. Then I went out, like when I was ready, I went out and I walked all over the city. I remember 5 kilometers, then 10 kilometers, then 20 kilometers, and then going home really, really tired, meditated, infused with adrenaline. Then I took up trekking. There is a picture here that doesn't show for some reason. And at one point, I also went scuba diving in the Bay of Bengal, which was pretty cool. So I'm going to fast forward to this last story of mine. This February, I went to follow up on a story in the Rohingya camp. It was about an international art project that came over and worked with the kids over there in creative therapy. So why I work with this is because after I was very, very sure of myself, I founded 2 institutes, one where I work with green spacing, community and rural community workspace creation, and creative therapy workshops. And the other where I take women out to travel. We go on trips, different places. It's amazing. Men are allowed too, as long as they're somebody related to the woman. So this is something I wanted to follow up, like what they did when it comes to creative therapy. They turned drab tin walls into amazing pictures, as you can see. These pictures were drawn by the kids. And when I talked to them, they told me, when I interviewed them, they told me they loved painting. They looked forward to it every day. When I talked to the volunteers, they told me that before their subject of the artwork were guns or ships or fire, then it turned into people, nature, flowers. And there was change. That's a very, very, very significant change. So what you can do when you go home is express yourself. Think of something that bothers you. Think of, maybe it could be traffic jam. I know it bothers you. So write that down, but not how you would talk about it. Write it down from the perspective of someone who's hearing you talk about it. Or, if you're into painting or art and stuff like that, think about a problem. And again, it could be global warming. And draw a mug that expresses global warming, or paint a tree that expresses global warming. You won't completely forget about the problem, but you would feel light. You would have dealt with your problems head on. And, you know, it would be one more resolved issue for the day. Thank you very much. My name is Jannati Hossain.